Hey everyone, this is Ethan, TGIF, but still going to be a draft preview today. Every day, weekends included, I'm going to be putting something up. I'm actually recording this a little bit earlier than I usually record, so that way I'm still able to do things in the late evening, but it's going to be going up at the same time, so shouldn't be any problems there. And today we're looking at the Cleveland Browns, possibly the best fan base in the NFL, and I'm actually a little bit nervous because I know that if I do something really, really wrong, all the Cleveland fans are going to yell at me and say that you don't know how you draft for our team, you don't know what's going on, blah, 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 which is cool because, I love Cleveland fans. I have some really close friends who are fans of the Browns. I have mad respect for Cleveland. Of course, they beat the Patriots this year. Gained a lot of respect for them for that game. So I'm going to do my best, and if there's anything that anyone wants to add to my video or wants to let me know about, feel free to tweet me or leave it in my comments, and I'll be sure that I acknowledge it, possibly for a later video if we get closer to the draft and see some different things popping up. Anyway, looking at the Browns, Mike Holmgren, of course, is taking over there, and Holmgren's one guy who we have a really good track record for. And we can sort of see a couple of things that have popped up. And one thing, which I've noticed, is the fact that he's rehired defensive coordinator Dick Jauron. And Dick Jauron last worked with Holmgren from 1992 to 94 in Green Bay. And of course, they're also shifting their defensive scheme into a 4-3 defense rather than the old 3-4, which means that there need to be some sort of changes made there. So looking at Holmgren-Jauron style defenses, the last time the two worked together, of course, as I said, they have worked together before in Green Bay, 92 to 94. It isn't contingent upon one dominant pass rusher. It isn't necessary to have a DeMarcus Ware, if of course he was a hand-down 4-3 defensive end, a Dwight Freeney, a Jared Allen. That isn't quite as important. The way that they get pressure is through a variety of ways, including defensive tackle and linebacker blitzes. And Jauron had that philosophy. Of course, one of the most successful teams that Jauron has ever coached was when he was the head man in Chicago. In Chicago, of course, he had Brian Urlacher at middle linebacker, really rangy, getting around, getting all kinds of different looks, different drops, different pressures. Roosevelt Colvin coming off the edge. Little bit of an undersized 3-4 rusher, but perfect as a 4-3 linebacker. And the interior combination of huge behemoths like Keith Traylor and Ted Washington. And I think that's a really interesting thing about hiring Jauron, that usually when a 3-4 team transitions to 4-3, a lot of the talent that was used in the 3-4 defense has to sort of been let go and be recycled because you can't really use them, don't translate that well to a 4-3. However, in this kind of style defense, it transitions really, really well. So I think that bears watching, like guys like Atiba Rubin, who was a nose tackle in the 3-4, is going to be okay in the 4-3. And he's actually probably going to be a pretty big role for Cleveland. I think that he's an underrated nose tackle. He's going to be even better when he has somebody right next to him, has four guys on the line. So even though I could see defensive end being a major need for them, I don't think it's going to be the most important need for the Browns. And another thing to think about with Holmgren is that he likes taking talent from the schools in the Big Six conferences. So I would sort of definitely look at those prospects first before moving into anything else, into lesser schools and smaller school prospects. So looking at the first round pick, I have an inkling that they're going to trade down. Holmgren likes to trade down, and a team that I see them making a move with, at least at this point in my mock draft, is Dallas, because I think there's a good chance that Patrick Peterson's going to slip to 6. If he slips to 6, I definitely see a trade down as a possibility, especially considering the biggest need for the Browns is wide receiver. And even though Tom Heckert is a BPA drafter, he's sort of married to Mike Holmgren's scheme. They work together in such a way so that as Holmgren scouts talent, guys who may be a little bit atypical find their way to the top of the board. And another thing that we sort of saw last year, especially since that was our first draft sort of together, look at a guy like Joe Hayden, 7th overall. He wasn't projected to be that high of a pick. at least in the later game after the Combine workout, so I'm not exactly sure how much of a role the Combine played in overall looking at Joe Hayden's game. I think that also is something to think about. It definitely plays some sort of role, but Hayden was a really interesting pick when they made that last year at 7 overall, and I think that they could take another similar really good college player at that position in the draft this year. So, looking at guys they could take, I have Von Miller going 5, but if he happens to slip, he would be a very good blitzing outside linebacker in Jaron's scheme. I could see him being a pick for them. They could go defensive tackle. We still have Nick Fairley on the board at this point, at least theoretically. If he's there, I could see him being the pick, even though it might be a little bit small for what Jaron likes. He's still such a talented guy that he might be someone to look at. There are also some good, bigger 4-3 ends like Cameron Jordan and Ryan Kerrigan who fit into that bigger role. Kerrigan more if they only trade down. Jordan, I think, could go higher than a lot expect him to. I think he could be a top 10 pick. But Kerrigan is more only if they trade down, not with Dallas, with a team a lot lower in the draft. And both of them are a little bit bigger, and they can bull rush, and they're similar to the defensive ends that, as I said earlier, they had in Green Bay when they were together, and they also had in Chicago when Jaron was DC. But I think that if I had to pick, it would be one of the wide receivers. It would either be Julio Jones or A.J. Green. Jones is a better fit for the offense they run because of his ability in the West Coast, while Green is probably the best receiver in the draft, and he can basically do anything. And that's part of the reason why I think they're going to trade down. I don't see both Green and Jones going in the next 2 picks, though it is possible San Francisco could take A.J. Green or Julio Jones. In Tennessee, they sort of go with best player going on right now on their board, so I could see that being an option. But if Holmgren picks up some good value for trading down with a team like Dallas, say, I think that it's very possible that he's going to take whichever one is left. I do think Julio Jones is a better fit for the scheme, but I'm not exactly sure how much of a role scheme is going to play when drafting a first-round pick. So I think that, gun to my head, and someone was saying, if you don't pick one, I will shoot you and blow your brains out, I'd probably give it to Julio Jones by the smallest of hairs, and A.J. Green is definitely upping his duration. Another name I didn't mention, Robert Quinn, could be a possibility, though. As I said, I don't know if he's quite sturdy enough, though he's more in the Kerrigan mold, which makes me think that he could be sturdy enough. But I'm not a huge fan of Quinn overall. So I think that he could be a pick, but right now I would lean toward it being either Julio Jones or A.J. Green. So second round is where it can get interesting. I think Adrian Claiborne, if he happens to slip, even with the Herbs palsy, could be a really interesting guy in the top of the second round, just because he's such a hard worker. He can collapse the pocket, good effort, and he can sort of play 4-3 DT or DE, even though he sort of said he wanted to be a DE. I could see him playing either. Christian Ballard, his teammate on the Iowa line, is another bigger guy who can play in the 4-3. And he could also either play DE or DT. Gives them a lot of flexibility when looking to see what they're going to do at the position. And even if they want to play some sort of hybrid 3-4, it also lets them have some flexibility in that regard, because Ballard can play D end of the 3-4. Some other defensive line options, second round, Jarvis Jenkins of Clemson. I'm a huge fan of his. I actually think he's a little bit underrated in this draft class. Phil Taylor, if he doesn't get overdrafted, which he probably will, and he happens to slip down there, I could see him being a pick for them just because he's so big and has so much sturdiness. I could also see him looking at the outside linebacker position because they might need some better typical 4-3 linebackers who can run in coverage and have better hips than what they have right now. Bruce Carter of North Carolina could be an intriguing guy, especially since they haven't been shy, even last year, taking guys coming off of injuries. So I could see Carter being a nice guy at the top of the round. And oh wow, this video is going really quickly. So super quickly, if they don't take wide receiver in the first round, Greg Little, another Tar Heel from North Carolina, could be someone to pick later on in the draft. Ricky Elmore has a lot of upside. He's a bigger guy with some speed, and he also gives them hybrid potential. Brandon Bear is pigeonholed as a 3-4 DE, but I could see him playing some defensive tackle. I could see Dominic Scaife being a bit of an upset pick later because he's a bigger guy. So just think about how the Browns are going to be changing their scheme a little bit and about how they might not need to get rid of so much talent on the defensive front because they could transition these 3-4 defensive linemen decently to their new 4-3 scheme, but just about how they can make it better and how they can improve the other peripheral positions. So that's about it because I don't want to go way over time and bore everyone. If any Browns fans have anything they want to add, feel free to leave it in the comments. I hope I didn't leave anything major out. I think that they're an interesting team to mock and an interesting team to look at, and this is one of the teams that I'll probably be doing a follow-up on later in the game after I've gone through my first cycle of all 32 teams. So yeah, tomorrow will be my next team in the series, the San Francisco 49ers. We'll talk about whether or not they're going to end up taking a quarterback in the first round. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.